U.S. was founded after colonial settlers stayed based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and then confining them to reservations, farms, and concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, it even sunk its claws into other nations, making a war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became a major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people and its boundaries, and those in every other country, bullying them with military intervention and robbing them of their right to determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight: racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary, racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working class composed of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is shining light on earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling the rest of the world's wealth and resources. We must have a basic needs met and a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see it, act, the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th of 1968 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and the original Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Beret, Rising of Avery, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist, imperialist system in various ways, around particular demands. Nevertheless, men have established a movement claimed with the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement, the first of its kind, has established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton, of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we were engaged in a great struggle. He said that it's a class struggle back then. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that the white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class division. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class sees this as the greatest threat to their class policies and subsequently views the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to press an emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We founded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is a model for a united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords. Young Patriots organization and all other Rainbow Coalition members, we established our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold tie all the organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed mass of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must have the necessary structures, and the United Front that will ultimately liberate themselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is headed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people, votes on the ground.
All power. Thank you, Sister Comrade. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Give me just a second here, and I will screen share the book. Last week it was blinking out or yesterday it was blinking out when it was screen shared into Zoom directly. I can still do that for you guys in the Zoom room if you don't have a copy on hand. But I'm going to screen share it directly into Restream so it's not blinking on the page for the viewers. Does anybody in the Zoom room need me to screen share it into there for you too?
Yes.
Okay. Just a second. There we go. Okay. Scroll down here. We got through chapter 1 yesterday. Just give me just a second to scroll down through here. I can let you know what page number we're starting with today for chapter 2. There we go. Nope. Apologies, I thought this would pick back up where we left off reading yesterday, and it didn't. There we go. Okay. Chapter 2, At the Center of the Universe. Once we were happy in our own country, and we were seldom hungry. Far then, the 2-legged and 4-legged lived together like friends, and there was plenty for us and for them. From Black Elk Speaks. The place in which I drew my first breath is gone now, overgrown with weeds, but the foundation is still there. The woods that were filled with the sounds and songs of birds and animals are silent now, and by the time I had grown up, there was little left of our once vast reservation. I was born on April 12th, 1937, at Federal Dam on the Leech Lake Indian Reservation. Bertha, my mother, told me that it was very cold on the 11th. Water, which had seeped into cracks of the trees, turned to ice and broke them apart with a sound like a sharp cry of pain. It was the kind of cold that can freeze the marrow in your bones. I was born 5 minutes after midnight on the 12th. My grandmother, Jenny Drumbeater, helped to bring me into this world. My mother said that it seemed I was fighting my way out of her womb. I have been fighting ever since. I was not born in a hospital, but on a creaking bedstead in my grandparents' house. It was just a wooden 2-bedroom house with a living room and a kitchen, a typical reservation dwelling of those days, without electricity, running water, or indoor plumbing. For light, we had kerosene lamps with shiny tin reflectors. For heat, a pot-bellied stove. And for cooking, an ancient cast-iron kitchen range. Always next to it was a bucket of fresh water from the creek with a dipper hanging from a nail driven into the wall. Outside stood the 2-hole privy. There were 7 of us living in that house, including my older brother Mark and my sister Audrey, so it was pretty crowded. We had no insulation, and in the winter all of our backsides froze. During those cold months, we put 2 feet of rammed earth around the base of the house to keep the icy wind out. Though I was not born in the traditional manner of 100 years ago, inside a wigwam of birch bark, the mother-to-be kneeling on a layer of dry grass, bracing herself against a staff planted firmly in the earthen floor, my grandparents saw to it that some of the old taboos concerning birth-giving were still kept. They would not allow my mother to look at anything ugly or at a deformed person or animal, so that I should not be born deformed or blemished. I am also sure that they would not have let her step over a tree felled by lightning, for that might have brought on convulsions during her birth pangs. I know that my coming into this world was made known by a gunshot, because that was the custom at the time. The placenta was first placed high in the crotch of a tree where the dogs could not get at it, and later was ceremoniously buried. Traditional people put a newborn's navel cord inside a beaded rawhide pouch, which they fastened to the cradle board. Some individuals have kept their navel cord for their entire lives. Others dispose of them in various traditional ways. It was said that keeping a navel cord pouch for at least a while would give wisdom to the child. I don't think I ever had a navel cord pouch. At any rate, nobody ever told me that one was made for me. But I know that a big feast was given to celebrate my birth, and that a naming ceremony was held at my grandparents' house. Only the closest relatives and friends were present. They feasted on wild rice with deer and moose meat. They smoked the sacred pipe and spoke about sacred things. I was handed around the circle from one person to another, and everyone had good words to say to me. One way to find a name for a newborn was to have the grandfather shoot an arrow into the air and then search for the place where it had come down. From the things he found there, a plant, an animal track, a rock, he picked the baby's name. But Nawa Kumig, my Ojibwa name, came from Grandfather Drumbeater's dream. The name, as he told me, means at the center of the universe, because the land on which I was born is the place where Gitchi Manitou, the creator, made the whole Western Hemisphere from a tiny lump of earth. At that long ago time, Grandfather explained, a great flood covered the world with water. Wazushik, the muskrat, dived down to the bottom of the foam-speckled waters and came up with a tiny lump of earth in one paw. He placed it upon the back of the giant turtle floating on the surface, and the Creator made the little lump of earth grow and overspread the turtle's back until it became a continent, the red man's home. I think that Grandpa might have dreamed that one day I would fight for this earth and that all the living creatures upon it, and for the survival of our Anishinaabe people. Therefore, he gave me this name. He told me that it was sacred and that I had to live up to it. My names were entered in the tribal enrollment book and also in the agency registry of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Otherwise, except for a few close relatives, the world took no notice of my arrival. My mother did not even go for a checkup after I was born because the nearest hospital was at Cass Lake, 40 miles away, and we only had a horse and a buggy for transportation. I have very few memories of my father, Walter Chase. He had entered the military and then married and raised another family. I have since met my brothers and sisters from that family. We occasionally write and visit one another. I am proud of who I am. I am a Shinabi and Anishinaabe from the land of the Ojibwa people, a member of one of the largest tribal nations in North America. I was born into the pillager band of our tribe. 5 generations ago, we had a great chief named Ogama. I am his direct descendant. One day I'm going to go back and claim my inheritance. I'm going back to ensure that a way of life and thought which was created hundreds or even thousands of years ago continues. That is a responsibility that goes with being born. Grandma Jenny belonged to the Turtle Clan. Our band has 7. The crane, the loon, the pelican, the turtle or fish, the bear, the marten, and the deer clan. Each clan has a specific and important part to play in the life of the tribe. Members of the Turtle Clan are people of strong mind and deep understanding. They are sometimes called stargazers because they meditate on the nature of the universe and the meaning of human existence. They are often called upon to settle disputes within the tribe. When I was a child, the elders of our family were my maternal grandparents, Josh and Jenny Drumbeater. Grandfather Josh was a headsman and a leader in our area of the reservation. The people in his family have a long history of drum making. They are famous for being good singers, the kind of folks that go to ceremonies clinging to old ways. Our ceremonial drums are large and elaborately decorated. It is considered a great honor to make these drums. I remember at age 5 or 6 singing around the drum with Grandpa Josh and the other elders. My grandparents were traditional tribal people, but our old saying, the lodge belongs to the woman, the woods to the man, was not quite true in their case. Both Josh and Jenny took part in the outdoor life of fishing, sugaring, and the harvesting of wild rice. I recall when I was a small boy going to camps where there was a lot of smoke and cooking. The men gathered wild rice while the women parched corn and steamed the rice. This happened in the fall. After winter was over, we went to the sugaring camp. The snow was still deep on the ground as we set up our camp in old white army tents where we had to sleep. I was so cold that I cried. During the time of my earliest childhood, our extended family lived in 2 houses. One was Grandma's house, which had 3 rooms off the kitchen plus a dining room. Grandma's was always it. Grandma was always in the kitchen cooking. With my grandparents, Josh and Jenny, lived their sons and daughters, their grandchildren, Aunt Sarah, my older brother, Mark, and my sister Audrey. Most Indian homes were crowded. We didn't mind. We were used to it. We had a couple of cows, 4 horses, and a whole tribe of cackling chickens. Grandpa used to go logging. Every day he left with his axe. He worked hard and did everything by hand. He also had trap lines and would go each day to check his traps for rabbits. Grandma liked to fix rabbit stew for us. Grandpa could also hunt beaver, squirrels, and deer. Plenty of wild meat. The house was filled with muskrat and beaver hides as well as deer skins. We lived close to nature in rhythm with the seasons. Fishing, hunting, trapping, ricing, sugaring, berry picking. Grandma's home was always filled with these scents of these seasons. I was brought up by my grandparents. I looked up to them and felt secure and comforted by their presence. It felt so good sitting at their feet and listening to their old stories, which I loved to hear. Grandma smoked a long-stemmed pipe with a bowl of sacred red stone, the Indians' flesh and blood, which came from the ancient quarry in northwestern Minnesota. Grandma used Indian tobacco made of red willow bark and various herbs. The distinct fragrant smell of smoke agreed with me and delighted me even when I was a small boy. Winters were very cold. Grandpa Josh would get up at 5 in the morning to light the fire. I remember horses from old agency pulling heavy logs over to us for firewood in our old iron stoves that we used for heating and cooking. We lived at Headquarters Bay, at some distance from a village called Federal Dam. If we wanted to go anywhere from our place, we had to use a small boat to cross a wide creek. Then we mostly used buckboard wagons drawn by horses to get around. On the res, cars were still a rarity. Our res, one of 7 in Minnesota, was called the Leech Lake Chippewa Reservation. There are more Anishinaabe reservations in neighboring states. The res of my childhood was beautiful. Federal Dam was at the northeast corner of the reservation where the water from Leech Lake flowed over a dam into the Mississippi River. Leech Lake is very large with 640 miles of shoreline. Lake Winnebigoshish, I'm probably destroying that. Sorry. The second largest lake on the res is smaller, though still pretty big. The whole country all around is like a history lesson of our people. The lakeshore is dotted with ancient Indian villages and camps, which have become settlements and towns over the years. The lakes are surrounded by many small streams and waterways, dense forests, woodlands, and open meadows. The woods are full of pines, birch, oak, and most important to us, maple trees for making syrup. Game was still plentiful while I was growing up. Hunting, trapping, and fishing still played a large part in our tribal economy. Occasionally we ran into a moose, bobcat, or wolverine. It was said there were still a few wolves somewhere, though I never saw them. The lake echoed with the quacking of thousands of ducks and the mournful call of the loons. At night we listened to the howl of the owl, or hoot of the owl. It, then there were the bears. One time my mother and I were picking blueberries side by side. All of a sudden we heard a loud roar, and off in the distance we could see a big brown bear. Everybody was so excited and also a little scared. Grandpa Josh had brought his shotgun. He never fired at the bear, but we all gathered around Grandpa, huddling close for protection. From there, excuse me, from there we watched the bear. He was after the same things we were, blueberries. We stood still while he ate his way through the wild bushes. Every once in a while he would look up at us, standing up to get a better view. Then he would hunker down to the delicious business at hand. The bear went through the blueberry patch at a fast pace and came quite close to us once. We made a great deal of noise to scare him off, but this did not stop him from stuffing himself while still coming closer. Finally, he stood up for the last time, stared at us for a long minute, then shuffled off into the woods. He was not at all scared of us, and maybe he was curious about us, since we were of him. It was a great thing for a kid to remember. In some ways, we were very poor, as we had to do without a lot of things that most people take for granted. We owned one luxury item, a battery-powered radio the grown-ups listened to for news of the war. I don't remember having any store-bought toys. The ones I played with, old Josh or Jenny made for me. It was rare to have candy or sweets. Oop, sorry, I went too far there. Scroll. Maple sugar was our candy. Except for what nature provided in her bounty, we lived on commodities. Once a month, a big government truck would come with supplies: potatoes and flour, canned beans, bacon, and pork. We had to buy them with ration coupons. The quality of the food was pretty bad: powdered milk, powdered eggs, lard, powdered this and that. Many times when I was young, we did not have any clothes except what we were wearing. I remember my mother taking us down to the welfare office to ask if she could get a clothing order for us. After waiting and waiting, we saw her come out crying. And, excuse me. She said that the welfare people had said no, she couldn't get an order. Then we had to stay in town overnight with no place to go. We slept huddled on a bench, and the next day we walked the 13 miles back to our house because we didn't encounter a single car or buggy willing to pick us up. I remember the incident because it was such a long walk, and my mother had to carry me part of the way. She was crying the whole time. I don't remember anymore how or when we got clothes as we grew out of them. A lot of people came to our house to buy some of the fish that we caught, and I believe the money we got from selling fish bought some clothes. I remember on another occasion going with my mother to get some relief from the welfare. We were having a very hard time. I listened to an argument she had with one of the social workers. This man drilled my mother about who was living in our home, how many people, was the house sanitary, what sort of environment it was for children, and on and on. My mother did not reply to this. Instead, she said, "I don't have to answer this. I came here with my son to seek help. If you will not help, then we will just leave." And we left. Her last words to the social worker were, "You have to be dead around here before you will ever get help." Since the days of my childhood, the reservation has changed. Originally encompassing almost 1 million acres, the reservation has been constantly chipped away by congressional acts. It has already been reduced to a fourth of its original size. When we were living at Federal Dam, the Leech Lake reservations had a population of 1,800 to 2,000 Anishinaabes and around some 500 whites. At the turn of the 21st century, we have about 3,500 Indians and something like 6,000 whites. They outnumber us by almost 2 to 1. Over time, much of the land has been sold to outsiders. Large stretches of lakefront have been turned into lots for middle-class vacation homes overlooking the beaches. The reservation looks like a checkered board. Some land owned by whites, some owned by our people. The conditions keep changing in ways that do not benefit the native peoples. Indians are forced to take out fishing and hunting licenses on our own land, putting us, as far as the law is concerned, on an equal status with white sportsmen, even though fishing and hunting is a major part of our livelihood. And with the coming of gambling casinos, people who used to trap or make maple sugar are dealing blackjack or attending roulette wheels instead. Our traditions and values are destroyed inch by inch. But all of this happened in the future. Long before TV, computers, and casinos, there is an Indian school at Onigum, close to Federal Dam. When I was 4 or 5 years old, the school moved, and so everybody had to go to the new school at Walker on the west side of the lake. My mother moved us to a small settlement outside Walker called Old Agency. We had to get to our new home by boat. It took us a long time. We did not go directly across Leech Lake. We went from Headquarters Bay to Wibhold, where we had some relatives, and camped there for a couple of days. Then we took the boat from there to Stony Point, 15 miles away. We docked there and walked 2.5 miles to Old Agency carrying our things. From start to finish, it took us almost 3 days to get there. Holy shit. Some of the way we got to travel on horseback. I sat behind Grandpa with my arms around his waist. We settled down in our new home at Old Agency, way out on a peninsula with a winding dirt road where we would play. My mother was a hard worker and a good housekeeper. She was always busy in the kitchen or setting nets for fishing. There was so much for one parent to do. I can still see her bent over an old style washboard doing the laundry, hauling water, cutting wood, cooking, and baking. She always had a warm fire waiting for us on a cold day, but it was Grandpa Josh and Grandma Jenny Drumbeater I felt closest to. The two of them together were my family as my mother slowly grew more distant from her children. My mother was afraid of snakes. I used to pick up snakes, put them inside my pocket, and take them into the house. We would be sitting at the table, and suddenly one of these snakes would wiggle out. My mother would exclaim, "What in God's name is that?" I would answer, "One of my friends." She would cry, "No, no, no, get your friends out of here." I would scare my sister with them, and then my brother and sister would gang up on me and chase me out of the house. I spent much time on or near the lake. It was very big. I went out in the boat with my family, watched them set nets. I liked to wade by the shore. The water was alive with black, gray, and spotted leeches. That's why they call it Leech Lake. My mom and everybody else were scared of and disgusted by them, but I would pick them up to look them over, letting them curl around my fingers and try to latch onto my hand. I would go swimming, and I had to look over my whole body after getting out of the water because some of the leeches were very small. They would latch on between my toes or on my belly button or in the crack of my butt. It never bothered me, but the leeches drove the women folk into hysterics. Leeches are not poisonous, they're just a nuisance. The first time I saw one, it was hanging on my belly, a long black one. When I came out of the water, my mother was screaming, and so were my brother and sister. You seldom feel it when they latch on, and when you pull leeches off, the bigger ones don't want to let go. You have to convince them to come off with a little tug. We did a lot of wading and swimming at a place called Stony Point. It had huge boulders jutting out into the lake and a beautiful sandy beach about a half-mile long. It was a favorite place for us Indian kids to swim, but it's become a fancy resort for white people. Since we had moved closer to the centers of bureaucracy, the health service began to take notice of us. I remember some very strange looking white female creatures in starched white dresses with weird little white things on their heads coming to our house. Those were the first nurses that I'd ever seen. They came with their trays of needles, band-aids, and little bottles. I was afraid of them because I would inevitably end up with a sore arm or sore buns. A funny thing happened one time. The nurse who came that day had, on a previous visit, given me a shot in my rear end. So when she came again, I bent over in my most cooperative way and bared my little ass for her. She laughed and said, "No, not today." When I was a child, most of our people spoke English rather than our native language. My Aunt Sarah understood our language, but she hardly spoke it to us. Grandma and Grandpa spoke it to each other. My mother understood it, but she had gone to Flandreau boarding school where speaking our native tongue had been forbidden, so she talked to me mostly in English. Even so, I could speak and understand Ojibwa, at least in part. Later at the White Run boarding school, the teachers made me forget it. It seemed as if our ancient language might disappear and our old religion with it. I knew only a little about our spiritual beliefs. Grandpa taught me to make tobacco offerings. Tobacco is our holy plant, our greatest medicine. It is sacred to all Indian tribes. The smoke ascending from the pipe's bowls connects the human being with the Creator. I always carried a bag of Dukes or Bill Durham with me wherever I went and sprinkled a little on the ground, not knowing exactly why, but doing it nonetheless. That was what I was supposed to do. Once, when I was older, I was taken to a wake. For the first time, I saw a dead body, the dead body of a person I knew. I had a strange nightmare about this death because I didn't understand it. Later, I could understand when stories were told to me about going to the spirit world. I watched the elders put some kind of structure over the grave. It looked like a small oblong house, barely big enough to cover the grave. It was about 17 inches high and had a little platform at one end on which people offered spirit food for the departed. All of the little houses faced east to west. I remember going over to the burial grounds to put some food on a little tray on the west side. At the wake, some of the people spoke for a long time in the Anishinaabe language, and then there came the drum of the Midewiwin. I hope I'm saying that right. Our ancient religious society. It was decorated with beadwork all around its sides and wedged between four curved staffs with eagle feathers tied to their tips. I can see this drum in my mind now after all that time. With the drum came the singers. Their songs were so beautiful to me. I tried to get as close to them and the drum as possible. Their powerful magic touched my young heart. There's one other memory from that time that at old agency that has remained vivid. When I was about 5 years old, there lived an old half-blind woman in the edge of a clearing near us. I do not know how she spelled her name, but it sounded like D.B. Shantz. She must have been in her 70s. She would walk down the road holding a scarf in front of her eyes to shield them from the sun. She used to talk to the trees every morning and sometimes in the evening. The grown-ups told me, "Don't go to her house. She's crazy." We young kids, the 4 and 5-year-olds, would go over there in the morning or the evening and make fun of her. We used to hide in the bushes to watch her. She would come out of her house with a bag of tobacco in her hands, go to that special tree of hers, and sprinkle the sacred tobacco around the base of the trunk. She would gently touch the tree and speak to it in the old language and chant and sing to it. She was giving thanks to the Creator and thanking the tree and all living things. We thought she was weird, so we hooted and whistled at her. She just pretended to not hear. 45 years later, I was at a Sundance in Washington State at Yelm with the Puleyups. On the second day of the Sundance, a young man came to me and said he was having trouble with his wife. He had two young boys with him. I said, "Let's talk it over. We're going to have a sweat now." He gave me some tobacco during the sweat. It was early in the morning. When we came out of the sweat, the sun had just risen. I told this man, "Listen, after today's dance is over, you and your wife will sit down with me and we will talk. Bring your kids." I left him standing there and, with his tobacco in my hand, went over to a big tree nearby. I sprinkled some of the tobacco around the base of its trunk. I put my hands upon the tree, and I felt as if it were alive and I could feel its heart throbbing. I started praying. I asked the Creator for guidance in running the Sundance, to help those who were being pierced to endure and transcend. I prayed for the survival of all the green growing things, and for the winged ones, and for the four-leggeds, and for the survival of our Indian people. I prayed, "Grandfather, help us during this day and all the days of the sacred dance." Suddenly I heard laughing. It came from the man's kids. They were giggling out loud, and I knew just what they were thinking. Uncle Dennis has gone bananas. He's talking to a tree. I called to them, "Come here. I'll tell you what it's all about." But they cried, "No, no," and they ran away back to the camp. Later, their father told me, "Dennis, my boys tell me you are acting very strange." It took me 45 years to really understand what that old blind woman, Debishance, was doing. I bitterly regret that I never had the chance to go back while she was still living and tell her how sorry and how thankful I am now for what she had shown me. How soothing in retrospect to listen to the soft lilt of her voice in prayer. I loved her singing, even though I laughed at her, and now I know how close she was to the Great Spirit. I was even grateful to the two little boys who had made such fun of me because they made me see that beautiful old blind face again in my heart, bringing it all back so clearly. Shit, now the page just jumped. Give me a second here.
The cat was trying to get into the room like about 10 minutes ago. I don't know if he's still reading.
Oh,
I don't know if he's still
crap. Give me a second. With the laptop in this view, I can't see the stuff pop up.
Yeah, and your voice has been coming in and out, so it comes in really clear, so I don't know exactly what's going on. Not really now, but just basically
Okay. Um, I'm not sure what's up with that. This is going to make me stop the screen share in order to go back over here. Um, uh, crap. I don't see anything here now, notification wise, for like letting Kat in. Kat, if you're watching, try to pop back in. I'm not seeing anything pop up. Please and thank you. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make one of you like admin on the Zoom call, so that way if that happens while I'm reading, then you'll be able to let them in whenever anybody pops in, because it doesn't even show it to me sometimes when I'm screen sharing. Uh, it normally just pops up a little bubble like in the bottom right hand corner of my screen, but nothing popped up.
yeah, she had a message on our group chat. That's where I see that.
Um, okay, I don't know why this is being weird, but now when I tried to screen share the book back into Zoom here for you guys, it's not showing on like the list of windows.
Why is there like a page? Maybe a chapter or two left. You wanted to maybe. That's a few things.
Okay. Um, let's see. Okay. I found my spot. Yeah, there's only another paragraph left here. Um, I saw men go away from the reservation to fight the white man's war. Some never returned, leaving their bones in faraway places with unpronounceable names. I began to experience a sense of abandonment. My mother seemed at times distant and uninterested in taking care of us. She would go into town. Sorry, my page jumped again. Um, she would go into town and not come back for 4 or 5 days. She would be off somewhere for longer and longer periods, and I felt her absence deeply. I was taken by a feeling of loneliness, but my grandparents and my mother's sister, my Aunt Sarah, were still there to console me. Even old DB Shantz dropped in once in a while to speak kind words to me, feeling her way around with the help of a walking stick. Eventually, my mother remarried and faded farther and farther away into the distance, and finally came the terrible day when the yellow bus arrived. And that is the end of chapter 2. So on Friday, we will pick up with chapter 3, The Yellow Bus. And let's see here. Give me just a second to switch the Restream screen share over to you guys. Bam, there we go. Okay. Gabby, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say, hearing this, it's just so sad and so impressive to see that each night I'm hearing, hearing him talk about how the people, when they take from us, taken away to replace that place completely because I have versus to see that I'm showing that from the right premises, and hearing that is just so funny. It's just sad that it's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Agreed. It's downright shameful. I mean, this type of stuff is incredibly common on, pretty much every reservation across the country of, what do they call it? Eminent domain, where they go and do a land grab and, steal land from the people, things like that. I mean, that's part of what they were trying to do with those oil pipelines a few years ago. It would have run right through reservations and, been a theft of that land too. Um, yeah. And Comrade Joe, I see you've got your hand up, and then Sally. Go ahead.
If you want to let Sally go first, I can about 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sally, would you like to go first? I just wanted to say that the conditions that Dennis Banks is describing is some events are still happening today. Like I grew up without running water and electricity my whole life, and my grandma's been on the reservation and she has no running water or electricity. So I think it's really awesome. Like they should have running water and electricity. It's 2023. Like a lot of people on my reservation that have. I mean, we're otherwise, so it's hard to get water and stuff to some certain people, but like I think that should already be done by now. It's crazy.
Right.
It's the same conditions that he's describing back then. It's still the same today. It's crazy.
It's fucking shameful. I mean, think about it, you don't see any, other cities popping up that are mostly white people where there's any housing even being allowed to be built that doesn't meet the codes of having running water and electricity hooked up. Why the fuck do they think that's acceptable to impose upon indigenous people? It's not.
Right. It's literally the same conditions. Like nothing has changed. It's crazy. Right. Oh my goodness. My grandma lived out for her life. Part of their, she likes it that way, but she shouldn't have running water and electricity. You know what I
Right.
mean? Especially in the winter time, it's brutal for her. And she does not want to leave. Her area to go in memory somewhere where they can have running water and electricity, but it's literally just the same conditions. It's crazy. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Comrade. Go ahead, Comrade Joe. You've got the floor. Oh, wow. And Andy, I see you've got your hand up. You got the floor now, hon. Mm-hmm. All power.
All power.
Anyone else? Absolutely. All power. Fucking A. Yeah.
All power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Hell yeah. Right. Capitalism has only existed for a very short period of time comparatively to human existence. For the majority of the time that humans have been walking this earth, we lived communally, and especially here on Turtle Island, that's only changed since the last 500 years. But even in all the other parts of the world, before there was feudalism, before there was monarchies and all of that shit, people lived communally in small villages that were mostly their family, their extended family. And we didn't just survive, we thrived under those conditions. That's what we need to get back to, because fuck this shit show that wants to commodify everything that is literally a human right, as necessities for life itself. Housing is a human right, food is a human right, clean water is a human right, education, healthcare, these are human rights. If it's necessary for you to survive, then ethically speaking, it is a human right, not a fucking commodity. Right. Comrade Andy, I see your hands up. I don't know if it's still up or if you popped it up again. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. All power, Kelly. Comrade Joe? It's all good. Yeah. All power. Thank you, Comrade Joe. Uh, Comrade Gabby, I see you got your hand up too. Yep. Yeah, throughout human history, there's clearly, obviously, always been various ethnicities, various cultures, but this concept of race based on skin color is a relatively new concept that started also around 500-600 years ago, and it came with this basically mass invasion via colonization of the rest of the world, and it was put into place. It was conceptualized because these fucking colonizers wanted to have some way to justify and unify this idea with their religious ideology, because in Christianity it was frowned upon to own slaves, so they had to have some way to try to dehumanize other people in order to be like, see, they're a different species, not just a different shade of pigment of the same species. These aren't really people. So that's how they justified it, was creating this concept of race to be able to point at people in the Americas, in Turtle Island. Let's call it what it really is, because America is a fucking colonizer name too. So they wanted to be able to point at the people that they were kidnapping and enslaving from here, and people that they were kidnapping and enslaving from Africa, and tried to claim that they were subhuman. And that's something that's continued to fucking carry on with white supremacist ideology to this day. And it's all based in this falsehood of them trying to pretend as if, we're different species or something, and we're clearly not. It's nothing but a false fucked ideology for them to claim some kind of supremacy and be able to get away with, pushing it past, the church that was running shit at the time, and go, well, it's okay for us to do these inhumane things if we just designate these groups of people as not people. And it's all fucked. I don't know if any of you have read A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, but the first couple of chapters of that really dive into the absolute fucking horror and atrocities being committed here by these colonizers that were coming over from England, Spain, Portugal, France. They were wiping out entire tribes at a time. If the people resisted and, they weren't able to enslave them, then they would just, use their guns to slaughter them. And it, like Andy said, there's really no words we can put together to actually convey just how fucking horrific it was. But that book paints a very gory, graphic picture of it, as well as the fucked lines of thinking behind it that they tried to use to justify such actions, and it's fucked. It'll bring you to tears and make you feel like you're going to vomit because of the detail that it goes into, especially with like firsthand documents that are quoted in that book that were, sent back to Europe from like monks and whatnot who were traveling with these, conquistadors and whatnot. And it's downright fucking shameful. Um, right. Yep. Yep. Right. We're not. Right. When it comes down to it, all human life stems from Africa, and our differences in pigment level, our differences in brow shape and like eyelid shape and nose shape, these are acclimations to environment to survive in different parts of the planet as the human diaspora fucking happened. That is all. um, yeah. Yep. Yep. Same for curly hair. It helps dispel heat. Heavy eyelids help protect your eyes from either sun glare off of sand or sun glare off of ice and snow. Things like that. It's just acclimation to environment. That is all. It's not evolution. Evolutionary steps are what form new species. This is just acclimation to environment, period. And Comrade Joe, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead, bro. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Right. Cussing's okay, man. But yeah. Hmm. I'm curious. We haven't heard anything from Dr. Rob or from Corey yet today. Do you guys have any thoughts you'd like to throw in? Right. All power. Thank you, comrade. Does anybody else have any further thoughts? If not, we can start to wrap things up. We're going on an hour and a half. All power, comrade. And yeah, to add to that, this this system of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy hurts us all, and it's fucked. We need to fix this shit show. Yeah. Oh, they need the link. Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will try to, make sure we get that shared in there. If I fail to, if one of you guys can also share the link into the UPM chat, that way they've got that. Yeah, if we can start sharing that in there on the reading days so that it's right on hand, that would be very helpful. But yeah, anybody who is in one of the member groups of the Second Rainbow Coalition, whether it be the UPM, the Black Panthers, White Panthers, Brown Berets, New Era Young Lords, AIM, there's a few others. Anybody who's in one of those groups is welcome to join the book club here. And I can also share to you guys the links for viewing on the Second Rainbow Coalition YouTube channel. So that way, anybody who is not already a member of one of these groups, but would like to learn more about this and maybe see about joining, they can follow along there too with the readings.
Oh yeah, I just sent some. I just sent the link in text.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up because one of the things I do, and I'm suspecting that, is organize and bring vast so I can come and beneficial folks to bring when I was telling them I'm looking for quantity, how can we those that are not the tenants of these readings and have more organizations? Because we're going to teach what we're talking about. There's a lot of ways to make it to job. There's a lot of ways to want to make it to job. I think we can work on bringing in campers, like brothers and sisters, and gangsters. That would be beneficial to the civilians, brothers and sisters, too. I didn't know what about you. It was the first time I ever understood balance. This is one of the things I do, bringing people together.
Right.
That's effective. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. And yeah, if you guys have group chats for the Brown Berets, like what we have with the UPM, by all means, share the link in there. And I'll ask Alyssa to do so in the Young Lords as well. And, we can reach out there and maybe unite some more people, bring some more to the table. Because this is something that definitely needs that contribution of thought from people who have actually lived this experience that Dennis is talking about. Comrade Andy? Mhm. Right? It's definitely honed our skills with using stuff like Zoom and whatnot to actually be able to connect with each other. Go ahead, Comrade Gabby. Well, yeah. And to add to that, Gabby, I will DM you later so we can talk further about this because I don't really know my way around Discord very well. But if there is a way to link it up where our streams can stream to Discord too, then we can do that. And if not, then we can at least start sharing the YouTube link into there so that people in the Discord server can watch along and participate too. And that said, Comrade Joe, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead. Yeah. Yes. Agreed. All power. Yes. Well, all power. Yeah, if you can send us that link in oh goodness, Signal, I would definitely love to check out the Brown Berets study group on Thursdays.
I love your dog, Sister Trisha. It's so cute.
Thank you. It's my awkwardness. Right. Right. Exactly. Meeting them where they are. Absolutely. All right. Well, all power, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. It's been another dope ass week. You too. Thank you, comrade. Panther Love, I'll see you all on Friday. Looking forward to it. All power.